Hello. I hear a cat. I don't know why.
It sounded like the cat said hello as well.
Yeah.
In the optional lectures, I forget what are you covering the SAS or SCSS, or is it not one of the optional lectures?
SAS is included in the optional technologies. Today I will.
Okay.
Yeah, today I will cover TypeScript. I prefer to do that because many technologies, many topics in the optional technologies require that you know a little bit of React that we are going to cover next week. So yeah, it will make more sense that I cover next week. Unfortunately, that lecture last year was split into two lectures. So the parts that required previous knowledge of React were in the next week, but I combined them and now are in this week. It was original plan this week. So now it's better to reschedule, put TypeScript first today, and then in the next week, we are going to cover in a single optional lecture, multiple small technologies.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because yeah, like you said, you definitely need a lot more time. So I'll put that in my feedback. Hopefully, they can give you an extra week somewhere.
Great. No worries. So we are about to start. And I'm glad that people are struggling with CSS. That's part of the mission of the of the project. And I will speak a little bit about this as soon as we reach 9 o'clock. There you go. Now we can start. So welcome everybody. Before I start sharing the screen for today's activity, I just want to address something about the case study. I'm super happy that to report that many of you have written me or put it in the Slack channel, in the Slack groups, about ways to optimize the header and the footer that are supposed to be repeated. They need to be repeated across the pages. Yes, there are ways to optimize this process, but most of them require JavaScript, and the intention of this project is just to focus on HTML in using the semantic tags so you can understand what are so important, and CSS. If I allow people to start using JavaScript to optimize the process, then I'm introducing one layer more of complexity in the project, and instead of having 3 days to focus on HTML and CSS, you will spend just less than 1 day in each technology. Thus, you will not be able to learn them fully. That's why I wanted this project focus only in HTML and CSS. In fact, I will disable the JavaScript interpreter. That is basically the thingy that allows the browser to run and understand JavaScript. So if the web page doesn't work with JavaScript disabled, the project will fail. Because this is exactly what I need to, you can focus. You will have another project next week in React where you will be able to code all the logic that you want to use with JavaScript. And so all your coding skills will be put in practice next week. But for now, I really need that you focus on HTML and CSS. Why? Because next week we touch React. React is complex. And by the time that we go into React, we are gonna build bigger projects. And in those points, you saw Tuesday coding activity that took a lot of time, and that was with HTML and CSS. When we reach React, I will only explain the React part, and I will write the HTML and the CSS quite fast, because if I stop to explain the HTML and the CSS, we're gonna move from 4 hours lectures to 6 to 7 hours in a single day. Can I do it? Probably with a 2 or 3 cups of coffee. Can you take it? And to be honest, can a normal person absorb that much information in a single day? Probably not. So starting next week, I will not be able to ask questions about HTML and CSS. And the only way that I can move on from that topic and focus only on React is that you focus on this project only in HTML and CSS. So try to, I know that it's annoying that the current process to make the header and the footer, but That's part of the plan. So no server-side solutions, no JavaScript solutions. Even somebody says about iframe. Okay, that was something important that to mention. Iframes are considered a huge security risk nowadays. So it's better to don't even think about that at all. So yep, with that out of the way, now let's focus back for a while into JavaScript. And just let me quickly check the chat. Okay, no, it's nothing important. Oh, and by the way, and if you're struggling with CSS, yes, that's part of the process. Because again, when we reach React, you need to become comfortable with CSS. But don't worry, based on the experience on the 7 and especially the 8, by the end of the Cupcake website, most of the students were feeling comfortable with the basic of CSS. Of course, there's a lot more that you can learn, but people felt comfortable with this one because it's perfectly designed for learning this skill set. So don't worry about that. By Friday, you will feel very comfortable with CSS. This is a promise based on the results of last year.
Eduardo, just a very quick question. What did you say it was a security concern?
It's called iframe. That it's it's an HTML tag that allows you to load a website inside another website. So technically, you can create a website with just the header, and then a second website with just the footer, and then a third website. It will be your real project, and then inside this third website, you call the other two websites. And just by hearing the complexity of what is happening behind the scenes, you can see what is a bad idea.
Okay, thanks.
Don't worry. So, okay, now let's get started with today's project. Let me share the screen. And today is going to be a little bit long. And if we need to split it into parts, we're going to do it. We have 1 day of buffer tomorrow. This is today's project. There is no slides for today. Let me open with Finder. Let me load it. Just give me a second. So today we're going to do a to-do list in JavaScript, quite similar to the one that you did in IP. Don't worry, in JavaScript is way easier, so we probably be able to finish in not that in a quite short amount of time. So let me close this one and let me show the functionality. Let me delete every single task. Let me reload the page. And I can add any task. Remember that yesterday we saw this prompt window, so we can say, for example, by carrots. Then if I reload the page, you know, we have this local storage. Then I can add another task, for example, by tomatoes. I reload the page, it's still working. In fact, if I close the tab and I open it again, it should be still up. If I close the browser and open it again, paste information, it will still be here. And then finally, by I was about to say Coke, but people will think about that something else. So let's say by Pepsi, and it's uppercase, Pepsi soda. There you go. And one more time, I reload the page, and if I delete the item in the middle, this is the correct one that gets deleted. The list automatically updates from 3 to just 2, and so on and so forth. So yeah, this is gonna build this one. It's not gonna be as technical or efficient as the one that you build in Java. Of course, you had 4 weeks to do it, so of course your project in Java will be way better implemented than this one in JavaScript. But something important, if you manage to put this in Firebase and you send a link to a client, they will see something useful instead of a weird cryptic thing called GitHub with a bunch of text files that makes no sense for other people other than developers. So again, this is the advantage of the front-end development world. We can market our skills way better than other developers. So, okay, before we get started, because this is a little bit more complex than the exercises we have been done before, it's better that we can start explaining a little bit about the project before we start coding. And this is the key when you want to make this kind of projects. So let me just open a clear area where I can work. Let me put in my zoom on 100%. Perfect. We are gonna need multiple files in JavaScript to avoid having a single monolithic project. We are not gonna make it real classes in this exercise. If I touch classes in JavaScript, I will need at least 1 or 2 more days to explain about that. And I prefer to take a focus on React next week entirely. So that's why I'm gonna take a couple of shortcuts, but don't worry. When we reach React, we are gonna use the correct way to build complex applications with all the correct elements. So don't worry about that. There will not be shortcuts on next week. Next week, you will learn the true tools, the correct way to organize a small project or a big project, both for the group project and for your professional careers if you choose to become a front-end developer. But this will be just the practice for the basics of JavaScript. So we're gonna take some shortcuts in the organization of the project. But in any case, I will need a file to act as your equivalent of a main.java. Let's call this one a script, GS. And this file will be my entry point. And what I mean by entry point is as soon as I load my web page, I need to run some functions or some code to initialize the project. So I will put this kind of logic inside my script GS. If we can see our project side by side, just 1 second. If I can see my project in one tab, based on what we learned yesterday, we can see that we have a button and we know that we have these list items, and behind the list item, you know that we have a all L list. Yes, all L list to group the list items. So you know that in JavaScript we need some properties. I will put it in the white box. We need to call the get the button from the HTML. Get button from HTML. That will be one task. We'll need to get the OL list from HTML as well. We'll need to add an event. Remember, when we add a task, we need to add an event listener to the button. So these are the tasks that we need to do. And then we need to run. Also, we saw yesterday that in the console, the information was stored. But here we have something new. Each time that I load the page, I am loading the information from the local storage and displaying the list of the items. So we also need to display the current task or reminders. So yeah, this is what we're going to do in the main script. Then, just like you did in Java, to better organize our projects, we can have a separate file just to store the information, the local storage. Yes. This will be very similar to the file that you probably use in IP to create. I think it was called the file stream, the file streamer. I don't remember Java, sorry for that one. But yeah, you have your streams to stream objects, basically to create and read files from your text files and save information as well over there. So yesterday we learned about the local storage API. So we're going to create a file where we're going to have two functions, one to load data and one for saving data. Save data. There you go. And this will be functions. So and we can call it actions. We need to save data, and we need to load data. And this is something that I remember telling to the students last year. Each time that you're in a project and the requirement says that you need to save something, even if in the documentation it's not mentioned, you need to be prepared to, this one works in pairs, save and load. So if you hear something about save, be mentally prepared to also add the functionality to the load information. On the vice versa is also true. If you hear that you need to load something, be prepared to add logic to also save it. And so on and so forth. So, okay. We also need to create these items, and these items, we can see that we have 3 elements in the item. Number one, the number. But we know that a number, we don't need to worry about the number. Why? Because we know that HTML create these numbers automatically by us if we use for us, if we use the OL tag. But we need to create this checkbox. I will not click it because the node will disappear. We need to create this checkbox, and we also need to put this text inside. So to try to have the information organized, and this goes literally against what I just told you about the HTML project, where I told you don't use JavaScript to optimize the process. In this case, we will optimize the process, and we'll have one file just to create this particular item. So we're gonna call this item.js. We could call it reminder or whatever, or task, but I would like to call it just item. Create an item, and this item will literally just, let's see what it's gonna do. It's gonna create a checkbox. Create a checkbox. In fact, let's go one level further. Let me open the graphic design application to see. I don't need to open a graphic design application. I just can do it from here. What is gonna do this file? Let's see it into detail. First, we need to create a new list item. So let's say that this element, this white box, will represent the list item. Let me put that text label. This will be a LI. Let me make it bigger, way bigger. There you go. These cables around. Yeah. So this will be my LI. My LI, or just list item, list item, and parentheses LI, the LI tag. So we're gonna create a list item. Inside this list item, we are gonna need to put a checkbox. Let me put it like this. And let me put the X to represent that this is a markable checkbox. So we're gonna have a checkbox. And sorry, an arrow. We're gonna have a checkbox. And we know that this is in fact, it's not called in checkbox, it's called input type checkbox. This is our input. We're gonna put it around here. And then we need to put the text inside. Technically you will be able to write the text right here, but you will see that for better organization purposes, in this occasion, we are going to use an span tag. I will paint it purple because remember that's the color that we were using before to represent inline elements. And this will be here where we put the title of my task or / reminder. And this one will be a span tag, span. There you go. So this one I will put it around here, same line, and there you go. So this will be the structure of my list item. I can group it. There you go. So I can move it around. So this is what we're going to create inside this list item. In fact, I will put it here nearby so we can see the relation. So we are gonna create first a list item. Number two, create a checkbox. Three, create a span. And this is the fun part. We need to put the checkbox inside the list item, and we need to put the span inside the list item. And why we need to put it inside? Simple, because if we don't tell the machine on purpose, put my elements inside, the machine will do this. And we don't want that. We don't want to have 3 separate elements. No, we want that the elements are inside. So we need to tell the machine on purpose, put these 2 elements inside this one So we need to be specific about that. So I will put this one around here. There you go. And finally, to organize a little bit more the project, this is not obligatory. This can be easily be put inside this file, but I want to separate the very action of adding and removing task into a separate file, and we'll call this one events. Yes, because these ones are trained by event listeners. And what we're gonna do here is simple. We are going to create a function to add tasks. And remember something similar to the save and load. If you hear add, you probably also need to remove. So we're going to do something like this. We are going to create, or just create function to remove. Create function to remove a task. So this will be my, let me put it in full screen. This will be my 4 files that we are going to use to organize our small project. Of course, plus a file that is, of course, is the HTML file called the index, HTML5. And of course, this will contain the information on the, literally will show the information on the screen. They show information, show the task, the task to do inside the screen, on the screen. So yeah, this will be the file, the 5 files that we are going to use in this particular project called project to do list. I call it black. There you go. I started to connect the lines. Any questions in this stage about the how we are going to tackle this particular project? If not, I will continue. By the way, I'm with us. Yes.
Pardon me. Should you put the event listener to the buttons on the events?
Yeah, good question. I will add the event listener here because we need to put the event listener at the beginning of the button. But the function that will call will be called functions that are here. And I will showcase that part when we reach the project. Don't worry about that. So, any other question? If not, let's get started. Of course, I will give the final project files as soon as we finish the lecture, so don't worry about that. But let's create the code from scratch. Let me delete everything that I have here from the students last year. Let me create a new. This will be to do SDA 9. We'll start from an empty project. Perfect. Let's see. We're gonna create first an index HTML. Index HTML. We're gonna create the HTML5. We're gonna say to-do list SDA 9 in JavaScript. Perfect. Something quickly to see the design. Let me open the repairing finder. Let me open the list. Of course, it's empty. Just let me add a quick title. Let me close this one. Remove the zoom bar outside the screen. So this one H1 to-do list. Yeah, I can copy this one. Load the page, nothing happens. Of course, let's add some design. So something quickly. It's just one line of code. You cannot do this for your Cupcake website. That's part of the project is to learn CSS. I only do this because we don't care in this particular scenario. We don't care about the CSS. We only care about the JavaScript. If I reload the page, it started to download the resources. And you can see that the refresh this time took a little bit more of time. It's because it's downloading, downloading the CSS from the internet. That's why this refresh took a lot of time. That's why. So something to consider by. In any case, let's continue. As we mentioned here, we need to get the button from the HTML, the URL list. Probably this should be go first. We need to create a list first. And the button, I will put in a space so we can see the difference. So that means that we need to create I will put this one here so you can see it. We need to create a URL list, order list, sorry, URL list. I will put a comment here. This is empty on purpose because we are going to fill the info using JavaScript. So this LI item is totally empty on purpose. And then finally a button called act task. We know that we need to connect these two elements to JavaScript. We know that we don't need to connect this one to JavaScript at all. So we just need to put an ID here. Let's call this task list because it's a list. And this will be ID either act task or button list. You can use any ID, but for now we have these elements. So we create the elements here. The next step will be to create this file. So let's create the files right now. Remember, be organized. Put your JavaScript files inside a folder called scripts or JS. Here we're going to create this file called scripts.script.js. You can confirm that it's a nice real extension by using this icon. And we're going to organize our project by putting properties on the top, properties. Then we're going to have the initializer. The initializer will be the code that remember that we are loading the task when as soon as we open the web page. So we need to call a function similar to a Java constructor for that. And then finally, we're going to have our methods or functions that we need to run in the project. So, okay, we are in this file. So we need to get the list from the HTML and we need to get a button from the HTML. So, okay, let's do that. So const, let me minimize this. I can say task list. And just to avoid confusion in this project, and this is important, I will use the name UL list in JavaScript. UL list equals document get element by ID. We remember that the name was task list. Perfect. And we're going to do the same with the button. Const button equal document get element by ID. Button, I think it was called button list. And just to avoid confusion, this will be OL list. I will change the names OL list so we can use the names of the tags as well. OL list, button list. OL list, button list. And this is OL list. Perfect. So we have the names in place. Okay. Then we need to run a function at the beginning of the project. So just to know that the project is working, we're gonna we're gonna create the function start, for example, function start project. And then we're gonna say a console log. Sorry, this is button singular. It's gonna say hello from script.js, comma OL list, comma button. And we're gonna import this file here at the bottom. So it's gonna be a script. And in this case, I will create the script source. And we only have one file, is JS, script.js. There you go. And let's test it out. Let's go to the console. And it didn't just work. Just give me 1 second if I'm missing something. Let me see. Console log script. Oh, okay. Of course, we create a function, but we never call the function. So let's call the function here. Start. Reload the page. Perfect. And hello from script.js. And if I pass the mouse over here, we can see that OL list. Of course, it's invisible because it's empty. But we know that the space is being left for us to put the content inside this space. And this is the button. We can find it. So we know that everything is connected correctly. So, okay, let's go back to our project list. We know that we have this task done. So perfect. We know that we have this task. Perfect. We need to add an event listener for the button. We need to display the correct reminders. I can add the event listener right now. So we can put it in the initializer here. We can put it outside, but if we are calling a function just to act as a constructor in Java, let's put the event listener here as well to say that everything that starts on the as soon as the page loads is the thing that is around here. So let's say here button dot add event listener, click event. But it turns out that we don't have this file. Let me close this screen. We don't have this file yet. So for now, I will create the function here, but then I will move it later to organize the project a little bit. It's called refactoring. So for now, I will put the event here just to check that the button is working. So I will say function test add. Just so we know that the button is working. It's a dummy test. It's a dummy function. It's a fake function that we're gonna replace later with the real one called add task. So function test add, and then alert button click. So let's see. Reload the page. Perfect. So we know that it's working. And for now, we're gonna have this one, and I'll put a comment. This will be replaced with the real add task function later. Perfect. So far we have the elements. Of course, we don't have any task yet, so we cannot. There is no reason to create a function to display the list items just yet. But let's move to the next element, and the next element will not be to local storage. Why? Because we don't have any task yet, so there is nothing to save or something to load. So we can probably move this one around and say that this one should be created later, almost at the end. So we're gonna organize this one a little bit and a little bit. Perfect. So let's create a function to create an item. So, oh, before we move to this one, any questions? I don't see the chat. So each time I finish a file, I will allow 1 or 2 questions. So if there is one question right now, go ahead. No? Perfect. So we're gonna move to create the next element. It will be this one, item.js. New file, item.js. Perfect. Inside this one, we need to remember, we need to create this particular element on the screen. Let me put it in the middle so we all can see this one. So we need to create this element, the task item. So how do we do that? As always, first of all, we need to import the file. So I will import it, script source.js/item. Watch out for the double slash. This is important. Remember, we are not working with real classes right now. In React, we're gonna work with real functional components that is even more advanced than classes. So it's even way better than using classes in JavaScript. So right now, just like we were speaking with Nuri about CSS, right now everything will be in the global scope. So that means that you need to import your elements first. If you import the file, the item later, the script will crash because when you try to call create an item, the item function is still doesn't exist. So you need to import it first. But we're gonna do this only in this particular project. For React, we're gonna work in the correct way with compilers and everything. So don't worry about that. Just a quick note in case that you want to repeat the exercise in your own later today. So okay, we need to create an item. So we're gonna literally use a function create item. Perfect. And because we are creating these elements, the checkbox and the list and the title or the text of the task itself, you probably start thinking about, hey, this task list needs some information in order to be created. You're right. The first element that we need is the title of the task, or the reminder itself. We need a title. Unfortunately, we are not in Java, so we cannot say a string to enforce some code practices that you should send me a string. But we're going to see how to do that in TypeScript. In TypeScript, that is the topic of today's optional lecture, allows you to write, to bring the best features from Java, in this case, strong typing, into JavaScript. So we can tell the machine only accept strings as this parameter in the function called title. So far, so good. So we create the title. And as I told you, we need to create a list item. And how do we create a list item? How do we create HTML tags on the fly in JavaScript? Let's do it. So let's create, let's create HTML tags using JavaScript. So we're gonna say, I can hide this one. I can say const the list item equal document create element. Yeah, create element. And this is a method you saw in the documentation. And then we need to tell the name of the tag. So this is gonna be the tag. And you can see that if I press the double quote, it allows me to see every single tag that there is in HTML. And as you can see, and they are sorted in alphabetical order, there is a lot of tags in HTML, like a lot of tags. These are the 6 levels of titles. But remember, only use it until level 4. Otherwise, it means that your web page is too complex. You have all the tags in HTML. So there are a lot. But as I told you, you can use the cheat sheet that is on the SDA platform, where you can see the most important ones, the most used ones, and you can even see the classification by the grouping tags to group components, the elements for the text, the buttons, and so on and so forth. So you don't need to worry to memorize all these tags. But for now, we know that this is a li. So you don't write like this. You just literally just put li. So this will create a li. Perfect. Next, we need to create a checkbox. So checkbox equal document create element. And this is a tricky one. As you can see that the name of the tag is not checkbox. The name of the tag is input. So I will put input, but something to consider, this will create a normal input text. So that means that we need to modify this checkbox to become a real checkbox instead of the normal input field. And we're gonna see that later, how to modify the tags using JavaScript. And finally, we need a span for just writing the title itself. This can be a H2 or something like that, but let's use an span. Let's keep it simple for now. Document, create element, again, span. Perfect. So this is created. Perfect. We have in the computer memory, now we have this information created. But as I told you, we need to set up the stuff first. What do we need to do? First, we need to modify this HTML tags. So we need to convert this checkbox into a real checkbox. So let's do that. We can say checkbox dot set attribute. And in this one, we can say type. And I will explain in HTML in a second what is this checkbox. I will copy this line for 1 second. This line, I will put it just for 1 second here as a comment. This one. You can see that JavaScript becomes white because HTML doesn't understand what you're trying to do right now. But what I'm trying to compare is that these 2 lines of JavaScript are the equivalent on HTML of saying input, type. Oh, sorry, this is another, that's an incorrect element that I was trying to copy. It's this one, sorry. Const checkbox, there you go. So these 2 lines of code are the equivalent of, let me just put this one inside this script tag, just so you can see the color highlighting in Visual Studio Code. Much better. Perfect. So this line is plus this line. This one creates the element. Will be the equivalent. I just do it. I just did this. This line will be this, and this line will be the equivalent. As you can see, set attribute type checkbox. It's equivalent of saying type equal checkbox. So these two lines of JavaScript represent the creation and the configuration of a single HTML tag. So let's go back to our item. So we're creating the item. Perfect. So far, so good. And then we need to add the title to the span. So we can display something on the screen. So we say span. We saw this one yesterday, similar, the value. In this case, for span is inner text equal this value that we're going to receive. Title. Perfect. So we are creating the checkbox and we are creating the title. Perfect. But this is the most important part. Now we need to tell the machine, we create this one, we create the list item, we create the checkbox, we create the span, and we forgot about a couple of steps. We need to configure the information here that we just did. Now we need to put in both the checkbox and the span inside the li tag. So remember, we have let me see, yes. Right now we have done this, but we need to put this element here, and we need to put this element here as well. So they are part of the li tag, so they are grouped. Sorry, so they are grouped together. So this is what we need to achieve, that these elements are a single group instead of being independent. So how do we do that? Let's do it here. Let me add more comments and add tags to the checkbox, and span to the list item. It's quite easy. Is list item dot append child is basically add a child, and then we just literally pass a variable. In this case, we're gonna pass the checkbox, and then we go again, this item, append child, and then we pass a span. There you go. Perfect. This function is created the create item, and we can do a console log at the end, console log list item, and we can create another console log just for debugging purposes. We're gonna say create item function. So just we know that the function is being logged. So let's call this function, shall we? We go to here. We can even say that we can put it here in the test function. So this one says button click, and let's say create item. You can see the function. We know that we need to pass a title, so we're gonna say hello for now. This is just for a test. So let's see. I will reload the page. I will add the task. Button click. We know that that's supposed to work. And then we did a console log. So let's inspect element to see what is happening behind the scenes. And it says create item. And you can see that the li item is created. And you can see that we have an input text box and a span with the text hello. So we create the item correctly. But the thing is, we don't see it on the screen. What is happening? Any ideas? We literally just create this element, but we don't see it on the screen. And the answer is, can somebody guess?
The method isn't returning.
Sorry, can you go again? I didn't hear you.
The function isn't returning anything.
Okay, the function is not returning anything. Okay, I like that approach. So let me create a constant, new item equal create item. Hello. Okay, and I will modify the function. And let me just change this one, console log, so we don't have a ugly alerts. So I will say return list item. So I will do just what you said. Now this function returns something. This return the list item, and we know based on the console log that this item will also return the checkbox and the span. So we know that part. Perfect. And now we are saying new item, create a new item. Perfect. And let's test it out. Let me reload the page. Perfect. And I will delete this console log because we know that this one is working. So we know that this one also works, so we can delete it. So we are returning the function. Okay, that was a nice step. We create the item, and we create the item, but I still don't see it on the screen. So you are in the right direction. That was important. We were not returning anything from here. That was important. That was a fair mistake. But there is another mistake. There is another step missing. Can somebody guess where it is?
We need to add to the ordered list.
Correct. We need to append it to the order list because remember, computers don't do whatever you want them to do. They do whatever you tell them to do. And right now, if I go full screen for this one for 1 second, oh, there you go. We are telling the machine, create a list item. We are telling the machine, create a checkbox, create a span. We are telling the machine, modify this input so it becomes a real checkbox. We are telling the span, add the text. We are telling the list item, hey, put the checkbox inside you. Hey, list item, put the span inside you. And then we are telling the machine, return the list item. That was correct. This step was missing, so we needed to do this. And then we are creating the item, but we are never telling the machine, put it inside the web page. And yes, we want to put it inside the or out list. So just like this step, we are gonna do the OR list append child, and we're gonna put a new item. And we don't need to call it new item. We can just call it no, new list item. Let's use a new. I think that's a nice name. Perfect. I will modify this file again. Put it here. So congratulations to both of you. You both solved the problem. We needed to return from the item. We were not returning anything, and from the script, we were never putting the stuff on the screen. So if everything goes well, a task, and it appears on the screen. And if I press again, hello, 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 hello. Everything is hard coded, as you can see, but we can see that the numbers appear on the screen. That's perfect. So let's analyze what we have right now and what is missing. First problem that we detect, we can write it here as a list of problems here in a different test. Problems or stuff missing. Let me put it bigger and let me put it here on the bottom so we can see it. Problem number 1, we are hard coding for hello. So yesterday we saw the prompt. I remember that somebody yesterday asked me, "Hey, what was the code for the prompt?" Perfect. So we're gonna use that one. It's called prompt. So we need to call the prompt, so we can ask the user what is the specific task that they want to do. That's problem number 2. It's problem number 1. Sorry. Now, can somebody guess problem number 2? It's okay if you don't find it, but I have high hopes that you can do it because you solve quite quickly the add item on the screen. So, do you know what is the other element missing right now? Without counting that we are not saving information in the hard drive. As soon as I reload the page, by the way, everything disappears. But what else is missing besides the name of the task itself?
Yeah. We need to get the input from the user. We need an input text box in HTML as well.
That's the one that I just mentioned. So that's already written. That's hard coding the word and the solution. Okay, let's put it as a table. I like your way of thinking. So let me put it here. Problems as a table. Problem 1, and you say the solution 1. So okay, I love this approach. Solution 1. Prompt show a message allow the user to write the task. So yeah, this is what you're trying to say. Perfect. Problem solution. Now we have a little bit more assembled. Now, next
you
one.
need to remove a task.
You need to remove the task. Very well done. Yeah, right now, if I check the checkbox, nothing happened, but the task is done. I need to delete it. So yeah, we need to delete tell the machine to remove the task, And the solution, and this is gonna be a little bit mind-blowing. When we create the item, just like this button has an event listener in the start function, we need to add an event to this particular input. So if we go back to my item screen, let me just go back to my functions. Here, when we are setting up, let's say set up HTML tags, we need to add an event listener to the checkbox. So literally checkbox dot add event listener, and we need to in this case it's not called click, it's called on change. Sorry, change. It's in React that is called on change. In JavaScript it's called change. So we need to call we need to run a function here. We can add the function here in this file, but that will be a little bit disorganized. So the best approach is that the item just call a function, and this function create item, the file here, should not know which how do we want to delete information. We just need to run the function. So what I'm trying to say, let me put a diagram. If we do a diagram, what we need to do is that a script as a function. Let me put it in yellow, sorry. I'm a little bit daltonic today. And this is create item. So remember software engineering, we need to pass from here, we need to pass number one, the task title, parentheses, a string. And then we need to pass the function to remove items function. So we need to pass both a string for the title, and now we need to pass a function to remove items. Function to remove. So we need to pass a function inside another function. And I know it sounds super weird, but welcome to the JavaScript world. In JavaScript, it's not only possible, but it's common to pass functions between functions. And I will send you a link after this lecture that is called functional programming, because now that next week we're going to move into React, this will be our activities every single day. Every single day we are going to pass functions between functions, and in return they will return functions. So I know that it's a little bit confusing. It's totally different to the stuff that you are used to do when you create your IP project. This is called, I really hate to use fancy words, but this is what is called a change of paradigm. You were coding in object-oriented programming in the programming foundations and during programming in depth and individual project. But modern JavaScript is moving towards a functional programming. That is a new paradigm of coding. I don't say that it's better. It has its pros and cons. And this one is super related to passing functions all the time. So literally we're going to pass a title as a string, and we're going to pass which function will be allowed me to remove items from the to-do list. So we need to, on the checkbox, we're going to add the event listener. The change event is when is similar to the click, but this one is when the checkbox is marked. It should be the click event as well, but you know, developers are weird. This should be called on click, but no, it's called on change because developers are weird, it's called on change. So just roll with that. And here we're gonna call this function. It's weird, but let's test it out. So we are gonna pass a function, and this will be function test remove. And test remove, so now we'll say just console log. I was called from somewhere else. So let's test it out. Remember, we add a new parameter to this one. And if you go to Visual Studio Code, you can hover your mouse and you can see the arguments of this function. It says function create title. It says, sorry, create item, sorry. And the first argument is called title. Unfortunately, you can see that it says that the data type is any. Why it says any? Because JavaScript doesn't have a strong typing. So you cannot specify in JavaScript that this title is a string. Something that we can do in TypeScript, and we're going to see it today. And the second argument is a function to remove. And again, it says any. But we know there is a function. That's why I wrote function to remove. In fact, if you want to be a little bit more organized, you can say a string title. I'm going to put it here, a string title. And when we go back to our script and pass the mouse over, we can say that this is a string title and this is a function to remove. It's okay in case that you want to remember what data type it is. But if you want to code bigger projects, to be honest, the best solution is to just move entirely to TypeScript. That is something that you will see each day more in the front-end development jobs, to the point that I think that by the 10 or 11 iteration of the SDA at most, I will force the course to be 100% TypeScript, because you can see what is so important right now. Even if we are speaking about JavaScript, you can see that having the information of the string type or the function argument is super important. So in any case, let's refactor our function and pass test remove. There you go. We just remember, we don't say this, because this will run the function as soon as we are writing this line of code. No, we just pass the name. Hey, we are gonna copy this, and when the user click the checklist, it will run the function. So it will go back here and we'll run this function. So this is where it's gonna happen. So let's reload the page. We know that the information is not stored in the hard drive. It's okay. So we add a task. We are at a task, and we're gonna test if at least our function is running correctly. So let's click. I was called from somebody else. Perfect. And it was called from somebody else. Perfect. And if I uncheck it, it runs again. Of course, we know that as soon as what we want to achieve is that as soon as it's added, is checked, it will disappear. So we'll not be able to uncheck the items. But we know so far that it's working. We are 5 minutes before the first break. So do we want to have a round of questions before we move to the first break? Otherwise, we can have the break right now, 15 minutes, and then we will come back to 10:10. What do you prefer? I see silence, so I will give it the break right now. The only thing that I will do while you're on the break is that I will create a Git repository so we can start working in branches, and I will put this one in the first branch, so you will have like a timeline of the evolution of the project. So see ya at 10:10. Perfect. Hello, we're back. So let's continue. As I promised, I created a Git repository and I just added a small README file and a Git ignore, and now we can work on branches. So just a quick review of what we were doing before. We were creating the script. When we press the button, we pass the task title, we pass the remote function, the function name, and when the user click on the checkbox, it runs the function that was passed to the create item, and that's it. So this is what we were doing before the break. So same prayer as before. That's it. Let's continue. Just put this one on the full screen for 1 second. I need more space here than, definitely I need more space here than here. So we have these two functions, and the first step will be actually to organize them and put it in another file. So this is the files that we were having here. Just give me 1 second. Remember, just let me put a little bit bigger so we can read this one properly. There you go. There you go. I will put a little bit in the bottom. Perfect. So we're gonna do this. The next one is we're gonna create events just to move this function away. That's it. This is the only reason. So new file, events.js. Instead of calling it test add on task remove task, we are gonna use the real names. In this case, will be function on act task. There you go. And then function on remove task. There you go. So this will be our real functions. Just let me see that it's working. Console log add. Console log remove. So this will be the real ones. And let's let's import the files here. This will be the first refactor. In fact, let me create a new branch called refactor, because we are refactoring a little bit the project. We need to import the events here. Source GS events.js. Close it. Perfect. Now I'm importing it, the file correctly. And now that we have imported, instead of calling these fake functions, we can call the real ones. So let me delete this code for 1 second. And in this one, I will call the real one that is called on act task. Perfect. Even Visual Studio's code can see it. This one, on act task. Perfect. So I will just go here. I will go to the act task. And we know that from here, we need to create an item. So as soon as they press the button, we're gonna create the item. So create item. And this one was hard-coded for now. We're gonna modify it right away, don't worry. And then we need to pass the function on remove task. Perfect. Perfect. So let's see it if it's working. Reload the page. It's not working. Let me see. Oh, I think this is a problem that I think I need to put item first. Just give me 1 second, and I will explain why. Don't worry. No. This is when we need to debug. So let's see what is happening. On a task is here, events, and let me just do a console log at task to see what is happening to debug. So we know that the event is firing, and let's see if it's create item. Create item, the title on remove task. Just give me 1 second to see what is not working. Start. Let's go 1 second. Item goes first. Events is firing, correct? So button on event listener and click act task. So this part is working and this part goes to the act task. Yes. And then it's calling the create item function. And the create item function. Oh, okay. Yeah, we modify our signature in the onCreate function. We actually create a constant. Yeah, my bad. So, ladies and gentlemen, in fact, this is actually working. If I do a console log, create item. Perfect, it is working. Again, as you can see, people make mistakes. Computers don't do whatever you want them to do. Computers do whatever you tell them to do. And in this case, I tell them, create an item, return it, but we never put it on the screen. So I just make literally the mistake that I was asking you the question before the break. So it happens. So let's go with the suggestion of ours. Const new list item equal create new item, and then go with the suggestion of another student, and then ul list, ol list dot append child new list item. There you go. If everything goes well, let the page reload for a second. In fact, let me see if I can just remove this one. I think this one is making the process slower. So for now, yeah. For now, let's go fast without design. Then we put back the design back later. So this part is working. Perfect. We just move the functions. And the reason that I'm moving them is because I want to keep the files a little bit organized. So as we said with Nicholas before the break, we need to do the remove. So, okay, now let's focus on that one now. The onRemove event. So in the event, we have a small problem. We know that we are triggering we're adding events, but we don't know which of one of these buttons is being triggered. Right now, we know that the function is running. We can see it here on the console. On the console, we can see that the events are counting each time that we are triggering the event. But unfortunately, even as a user, we see which one we're clicking. Of course, we're clicking the number 2. Of course, makes sense. But for the machine point of view, right now, we don't have that information. The console log is just running, but we don't know from where. So we need to know exactly which one is being removed. But to do that, we need to start holding the information somewhere else. We need to have we have an array here. Sorry, we have an array here. So we need to remove we need to find which item is being triggered so we can remove it from here. So that will be the task to do. So we know that we need to tell the machine to remove a task, and then the solution is we need to find the specific item to remove from the OL list. Okay, these are our problems and these are our solutions. So let's get started. First, let's add the title because that's easier to implement. So on add task, instead of creating the new item directly with the hardcode value, we're gonna use the prompt that we used yesterday. So let's do that. Here, we are gonna create a new constant, and let me put a space, const title or task, whatever you want to name it, but I will call it a title, equal a prompt. We know that this is the JavaScript function prompt, and we make a question. In this case, write your new task. Perfect. And we can pass a parameter called, as you can see, if in the mouse hover, there is a parameter called default. It's an optional. And in case that the user, this parameter will be so the default text that you can see on the screen. So for example, we're going to say new task, and this will showcase the pop-up window that we showed yesterday, but also we'll see a small predefined text. So we don't need to write anything each time that we're debugging the application. You can leave it in blank. It's totally okay for you by that. So, okay, let's do that. We are gonna do an if statement, if title. So if we get an answer, we create this new item, And now we have the value, we have the title. So because we got it from the prompt. And then we added new list item. So let's test it out. A task. We see that this is the default text I see in the second parameter. And I can say, for example, add task number 1. Okay. And now it appears. Perfect, because we are sending this string based on the window to the user. So far, so good. So we can create even a new branch about for this one, create a new branch, number 3, add title. So this becomes the add title, and we added the title to the items. Perfect. So we just solved problem number 1. We can, I cannot, we can say that it's done. Done. No, it will be in the solution. Done. We know that this one is complete. Now let's do the other one. The other one is a little bit more complex. So let's try to do it. We know that this one is working. We know that the remove lock is working because we can add a task number 2, number 3. But we know that we only remove. We don't know exactly which one is being removed. Remember that these three to-do list items has the event listener attached to them, but we don't. The JavaScript doesn't know which one of the 3 is being called. We know because we can control the mouse and we can clearly see on the screen which one I'm clicking, but JavaScript doesn't know which one was triggered. It knows that one of these ones was triggered, but it doesn't know which one. So we need to tell JavaScript which one is the one that is being triggered. So let's do that. So let's say a constant, sorry, lowercase, constant, item triggered equals, and we have a property called event, and this is important. Let me open the item, and let me open the item for a while. These event listeners always pass an argument, even if we don't do the arrow function trick to pass arguments. Remember the arrow function that we saw yesterday? I will do it super quickly. Arrow function, remove, and then an argument. So even if we don't pass an argument, behind the scenes, JavaScript will always pass one single argument called event. And the event has the clues or the information that we need to know which one was triggered. So let's do that. So for 1 second, let me just console log to demonstrate the functionality. And I reload the page. I will add a task number 1, task number 2, and task number 3. And I will click on number 2, the one in the middle. And we can see that even if we didn't pass an argument to this function, we have this event. This event comes by default. We can see that it's an object. We can see a lot of information. This is cancelable. The bubbles is the scope. There is a lot of values here, but this is the important part. We can see in the target. I can expand with this arrow. I say that it says an input type checkbox. Unfortunately, we know that the 3 are input type checkbox. So that information is still not that useful for me. We already know that it's a checkbox. What we want to know is which of the list items it belongs to. So we can start exploring. Yeah, we're gonna take a little while until we find it. But the thing is that we can ask the computer which one is parent. And let me see what I mean is, just 1 second, let me go to this one. Remember, the event listener is not inside the list item. The event listener is not attached to this gray box. It's attached to this white checkbox. So the first task that we need to do is to find which list, who is the parent of this checkbox. So we need to find which list item is. That will be step number 1. Then step number 2, let's say let me close these ones. My first task, let's say that we click on this particular checkbox. My first task is to discover who's the parent of this checkbox? So we know that the parent is this one. It will be task number 1. Task number 2 will be to ask JavaScript. This is an array of task of list items. What is the index of this particular list item? So we can do when we remove the element, and you know how to remove elements from an array in Java and JavaScript. So we can tell the machine, remove the item number 2. Or if we can't start, if we start counting from 0, remove item number 1. So we need to do these two things. Number 1, we need to discover who is the parent of this checkbox, and number 2 is this element in which element of the array in the index. Let me just draw. Imagine that this is an array. I will make a quick draw of an array using graphic design tools, of course. Why not? So imagine that this is literally an array. Another of these ones. Definitely, this program was not designed for graphic design, so we can see a lot of caveats right now. But imagine that this is an array. There you go. Multiply it and multiply it here. So we know that this is an array. We need to find the index of this item. So the first thing that we're gonna do is find the correct list items. So const list item trigger equals event target. We saw that one here in the code. Remember the console log. When we trigger the event, we know that we have this target that is a checkbox. So we say event target. Let's see how to complete. And we can we have a function called closest. I see a question. I will answer as soon as I finish this part. Let me just mute my phone. I get a lot of calls right now. I don't know why. So, okay, what this function does is simple. We are trying to say for this checkbox, we know that in the example we are clicking on the number 2 on purpose. What is the closest LI? We know that it's not this one. We know that it's not this one. We know that it's this one. And this is the information that we are looking for right now. So this will give me the information of, will help me find this particular element, because this is the LI that is closer to this checkbox. So we can be sure that if we click in this checkbox, we are not gonna get this list item or this with this item. We know that we get this one, that is the correct one. So this is the list item trigger. So we can even do a console log list item trigger.
Well, I don't think there's a typo in closest.
Ah, yeah, closest. Thank you, nice catch. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. So let's try it again. Let me just make the console a little bit smaller because it's too big. Perfect. If I add a task, and let's say 1, well, let's use letters to make it easier. ABC. If I click in the middle one, I got the event, this one. We know that the event only is the checkbox, but the second one is the list item trigger. Let's open this one. And you can see that the mouse is already giving the information. And this one has the information that we need. Perfect. So this is the correct, we find the correct item. Perfect. So far, so good. So we solved this problem. We already know which list item. Remember that the event is attached to the checkbox, not the list item. But even if the event is attached to the checkbox, now we can know what is the list item, who is the father, who is the parent. We have the parent here, list item trigger. Perfect. Now the next step will be, okay, we need to get the index of this element. We need to get the index. We know that the index, you know that in Java, in JavaScript, in these languages, we know that we start from 0. This is the index, index 0, index 0, index 1, and index 2, because developers hate you and they are unable to speak like normal people and say index 1, index 2, and index 3 like normal people. Unfortunately, it is what it is. So we start with index 0. So, okay, we need to find this index, but we have a small problem. We are not dealing with elements with normal data types like strings and numbers, booleans, or classes. We are not dealing with data. We are dealing with graphical user interfaces. We are dealing with something close to a picture than to a. I know that the checkbox is not a picture, but from the point of view of a computer, the checkbox and the list item is close to a picture than to a piece of data like a string. So we need to convert this data. Remember that we saw yesterday with the object. Let me open the slides. 1 second, so we can. Now we will see the difference that we were speaking yesterday in the JavaScript class. Let me open this particular 2 slides for 1 second, and now you will understand one particular slide I mentioned yesterday. If we go to my code, and we know that the element, if we pass the mouse, you can see that this is a HTML element. We know that behind the scenes, this contains our list items. But let me open the slides for 1 second. Let me see the document object model. Let's play around with these 2 slides. We know that this variable or list is targeting this particular element. But yesterday I mentioned about the document object model, and I told you that JavaScript doesn't understand this. I know that sounds stupid because just less than 20 minutes ago, I just showed you how to create list items using JavaScript. But JavaScript doesn't understand HTML. JavaScript only understands the DOM. And remember that I showed you that there is a difference between an HTML tag and a JavaScript node. So although for us, they look the same, from the computer point of view, they are different. So we need to convert this information here. We need to convert this information from an HTML, for a group of HTML tags into an array. Remember, an array that JavaScript can understand. So let's convert this to an array that JavaScript can understand. So let's just say nodes or node arrays. Or we can even call it a HTML to node array. But no, this name is horrible. So just call it nodes. And we're gonna do array from, what is array from? Let me see, the documentation creates an array from an iterate object. What it's trying to say is we are gonna try to convert this element that is this is a collection of, literally the name says here, HTML elements, sorry. But this is a group of HTML tags, and we're gonna try to convert them into a JavaScript, into nodes. In JavaScript nodes, are something that the JavaScript can understand, and if because it will become an array, the arrays has we can iterate between an array, and this is important, but we can iterate in an array. So we're gonna say urlist dot children. Why urlist dot children instead of urlist? The answer is quite simple. Let me open the HTML. 1 second. This is a OR list. This is our OR list, but we don't care about the tag. We only care about the children inside. Remember, the children are li blah 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 task A li task v and so on so forth. We want to create an array of these items. We don't want to create an array with this element. We don't care about this element. We care about his contents. So that's why we say here, let me delete it. We say create an array from your list children, because we don't want to include the OL tag. Let me just visualize it one more time. Let me make this one bigger. This is going to be the array where we are building. Let me just make it a little bit bigger.
quick question.
Yeah.
Is children, could children be any other name? Like, could I just write elements, or is that a fixed?
No, it's a fix. If I press a dot, yeah, it's well. Unfortunately, right now it's not telling me what, but it's children. Let me see if I pass the mouse. Let me go to the documentation because Visual Studio Code is failing on this one, and let's say HTML children. Children property. Done.
Okay.
Definition: the children property returns a collection, Java collections, of elements from an HTML collection object. In human words, this returns an array. And now you can see we can start playing around like it's an array. So we're going to convert our element into an array. And if we don't say children, this is important, we're going to have this problem. We're going to have this element. No, let me use the same color. And this item in my array will be, let me copy it, the ordered list, OL. And our array will become messy because now this one will be index 0, this one will be index 2, 1, 2, 3. Remember, we don't care about the container. We only care about the contents, the list items. So that's why we say children, because if we skip that one, we're going to create an array, and our array will contain information that we don't care about. So that's why we put children. So now that we have the nodes, let's test it out. Let's do a console log again, console log and nodes.
Eduardo?
Yes.
I think there's a typo, or maybe UL list. I think it's called OL list.
Perfect. Thank you. Yep. That was it. In fact, OL appears on my autocomplete in Visual Studio Code. Thank you so much, by the way. And maybe, oh, hey, look, now that's why I didn't get information. Thank you so much, Natalia. That's why we didn't get, remember that when I put UL and I pass children, it says any, because Visual Studio Code doesn't know what the hell is UL list. But because we know that what UL list here is a HTML element, now I can pass the mouse and I can say that children returns a collection of HTML elements. Remember, HTML elements are still literally HTML tags, so we cannot iterate this element. So you cannot do this. This makes no sense for the computer. For you, can make sense because we know there are a group of list items, so probably just grab the number 1, but it will not work. Machines don't do whatever you want them to do. Machines do whatever you tell them to do. And this is HTML, and we need to convert it to JavaScript nodes. So now we have the nodes, and you can even see that it's an array because you can see the square brackets. So we know that it's going to work. So we can say nodes. There you go. And reload the page. Task A, sorry, that was Spanish. B, C. We press the middle one. And look at the difference. Look at the difference between list item and nodes. This one is just a list, but this one has the curly braces. This one is an array. Now we can play around with this one. And we can tell the machine to remove this item. So let's do that. So we say or a list remove. Oh wait, just give me 1 second. Children item remove child. Yeah, UL list. Oh yeah. To be honest, I don't need the nodes yet. This is for a step that I'm gonna do later. So yeah, right now I don't. Oh no, sorry, forget what I say. I'm speaking bullshit. Okay, now I have the arrays, but we need to find the index. So sorry, I made a mistake in my mind. Now that we have the nodes, we need to find the index. So const index equal nodes index of list item trigger. So now the question is, we know that we click on this one. We know that we have this array. The question is, what is this number? So if I click on this element and this element belongs to a 3-item array, what is my index? We know that the index is 1. This is the information that we want to get. So nodes.index of, and now we can say console log index. Perfect. Now I reload the page one more time. A, B, C. If I click on number 2, I click, and it says that it's number 1. Remember that we see the list in normal from starting from 1, but you know that the arrays start from 0. So 0, 1, and this will be 2. And this one has a title. Sorry, this item. Sorry. Task C. So we have now we went from the checkbox to find the parent, and then the parent we convert this into an array, and then when we converted this into an array, we find the correct index. Now that we have all this information, I can delete the console logs. We can finally remove the element. So we say all list or list or list. And just like we have the property append child, remember what I told you when we were here? Sorry, is one here? If you have save, you probably have load. If you have add, you have probably delete. And if you have append, you probably have remove. So the property is remove child. Remove child, you can see it. I open parentheses. And this one will be this index. Okay, no, I can delete this one. Sorry, now I understand what was my mistake. For this one, I can remove this one entirely, skipping this process. But I will use this process, these 2 lines of code, lines of code. I will use them for something. Just 1 second. There is a drill right now on the screen. There, perfect. Silence. Okay, let me go again. These 2 lines are necessary for another step in the project. In this case, to save to the hard drive. So I will I will put it then on the bottom, and we're comment for now because we are not gonna need it. So yeah, I did an explanation before time. So right now we can just do remove item based on this information. So let's test it out. But this information is gonna be needed later. So don't worry. It's not even if we did the information beforehand, it's still gonna be needed. So if I press this one, it removed it without any issues. And then we can ask task again, 1, 2, and 3. There you go. So far we can add and remove. What are these lines for then? The important is to store information in the hard drive, in the browser cookie. What happens, remember that the web storage API can only store text. So we need to store the information that is here inside this spam item. So this is the information that we wanted to find all along. So that's why we created, we are gonna create these items, this code later. To be honest, we're gonna do it right away. So let me save this one. And now we can say in the Git, we can remove, and we can add and remove items from the screen. There you go. We're gonna push this branch. There you go. I will push it. I forget to push the previous one, the number 2, refactor. Push as well. And now it will make sense why we created these 2 lines of code. And no worries, I will delete them right now. What is my script? Sorry, my title here. And we'll open the event. I will delete these 2 lines and I will add them later, making the explanation again, because yeah, my bad, I did the explanation beforehand. So before we move on, we are gonna create, we have the script. We can get the list from the HTML, we get the button, we can add an event listener. We cannot create this function yet, display the current reminders in memory because we haven't stored information in the hard drive, in the browser storage. So we are gonna create this class right away. We create the list item. We know that the list item has an event, so we know that this file is complete, is almost complete. We are missing this element. This one is complete. This one adds and removes elements. Perfect. We need to create now this fourth and final file. So let's create that one right away. And I will repeat the explanation here, don't worry, because I made a mistake that I explained it beforehand, before time. So let's create a new file, local storage, GS. Because we don't want to lose information when we close the browser tab. We want to keep the information until the user either completes the task or deletes the cache from the browser. We're going to use local storage instead of session storage. And we say that we need to save data and we need to load data. So let's create these functions as well. Function save data, sorry. Console log, a placeholder for saving data. Save data. Just to test that the functions are working. And function load data. Console log, load data. Perfect. The functions are, the placeholders are created. I will import my file. Let me put it in full screen. I will import my my load data as well. So script source dot slash JavaScript local storage, and there you go. Perfect. Now we can close this file, and we're probably not gonna open index anymore. Never again. Now we need to confirm that this one are working. So let's go back to events, and as soon as I append a child on the screen, we want to update the information in the local storage so that we can do the save. So here we're gonna say save data. For now, we are only literally gonna save data. And the same with the remove task. Why do we save data when we remove? Because if we don't save data when we remove, they will disappear on the screen, but when we reload the page or open the browser again, because we never saw update the information, the old list will appear again. So we need to save data each time that we add a task, and we need to update the data as well each time that we remove the task. So we are going to do that.
Wouldn't it be much better to call update data then?
Correct. We can do that, and we can create. If you want to improve your performance, and beautiful question. I am so happy for this kind of questions. Yes. Normally, the events that you have in this kind of projects are save, load, and edit/update. And edit/update will increase your performance because right now we're, as I mentioned before, we're going to do a quick project. Otherwise, it will take me 4 weeks to do it with you guys. If you want to make this project shorter, you need to lower the quality in some point. We're gonna save the entire list over and over again, and that's super inefficient. If you have a 100 items, the process will be a little bit slow. But for this small demo purposes of manipulating JavaScript with HTML, manipulate HTML with JavaScript, this example will be good enough. But for performance, what you just said is important. Instead of saving the information all over again, we should try to strive to just update information. So beautiful question, but right now my focus is not to teach you high-performance JavaScript code. But right now my only task is to teach how JavaScript can manipulate HTML. Performance be damned. I know that is not the most elegant answer, but that's the real answer. I hope that answered your question. But yes, you're right. We should have an update function. 100% right.
Oh, Eduardo, I have a short question. Like, when are we going to use the load data function? Like when we display the list of items which is available, we need to load the data that is already saved, right?
We're gonna load them on page load in here in the function start. Great question. So we also need to load data here. Wonderful. In fact, we can say load data. Yeah, thank you. That was a nice question. But we still are not saving nothing. That's why I haven't put the load data yet. Before we can load something, we need to save something first. But yes, we're going to reach that point. Don't worry. Nice question. Thank you so much. So let's test it out. Console again. console. Add a task. I don't care about. Oh, you can press enter as well in the browser. And as soon as we create the data, we are saving the data as well. And as soon as I remove the data, it also runs the same data. And we can test if it's, the load data is called correctly. We can just put it here. Of course, we know that we are not loading anything, but we know that it's called. So leave it there. Okay, we can leave it there. No problems. Now we are going to add, store information. We now can move finally to the lines of code that I explained beforehand. Sorry for that. Okay. We can hard code the keys. We can say that the key will be always, for example, the project will be to do. Remember that we need the key for the local storage. So we can say local storage here, local storage dot set item. Remember that we need a key. We can say there is a to do. We can refactor this and pass a key from here to the save data function. Sorry, for here to the save data function. But for now, let's hard code it. We can refactor, and we can spend the entire afternoon refactoring. I will give that you as an optional task to refactor the project. The project that I will unlock as soon as we finish the lecture has a much better refactor code, but that code takes more time to develop. So right now I will give you a code a little bit dirtier, but you will have the code, the better code as well, and you can make a comparison and try to refactor the code as well. In any case, we were going to save the information in the to-do list. And this is the important part. We have a problem. We know that the local storage can only store text, but we don't have text. We don't have text. We have list items. These items are HTML tags that has checkboxes that are HTML tags, and we have an spam tag that is also a HTML tag. And inside the spam tag, we have information. So that's problem number one. We need to find this information, store this information in some variable so we can pass it to the local storage API. Problem number one. I can write them down. We solved this one. So this one are done. Let's create a new set of problems and a new set of solutions. First problem is we need to keep track of the titles because right now they are nested inside li/spam. This minor sign means that I'm trying to imply that is inside the list there is a spam. So we know that our text, the text that we want, is inside here. Solution, two solutions. Solution number one, we can start we can create a function to search for this list item and then search for the spam and then ask for the, like we did yesterday, spam.value, and that will be the text that is inside the spam. A simple solution will be, sorry, this is a solution. This is problem number one. Before we go to the solution, this is my list of problems. Problem number one, we need to keep track of the titles because right now they are nested inside the list spam. And problem number two is that because we have multiple tasks, we have multiple titles. So we need to find a way to convert our titles plural into a single string. So and you probably had the same problem with the to-do list in Java. So solution number one, as I told you, two approaches. Approach, to be honest, the cleanest one will be to search down between the list item to the spam and do it. The problem with that one is that it's a little bit, it's too much lines of code. So we can go with a dirtier approach. And to be honest, it's not bad at all. To be honest, it's quite elegant. Is create a second array just for title strings. That would be a nice solution. So if we go back to this script page, let me delete the item. We're gonna touch item name again. We have this array from li items. We can create a second array called titles, and this will be an empty array. This will be this will be literally the array of items, the titles that we create. So each time that, let me modify the function. Let me open the event. Let me put it side by side. Let me minimize this one. So each time that we append the item, we can also push to this array. In fact, we can do it right now. Let me do it. I will say titles plural because it's an array. Push. This is how to add an element to the array, and we can pass the string as well. There you go. So, and let me do console log from this one. Console log titles array titles, and let's see what is happening. Let me open the page. We know the load data. Perfect, it's working, but we don't have data yet. And we'll say task A, task B, task C. And you can see that my array of titles first start with one element, then with two elements, and then with three elements. So we find a quick and cheap solution, cheap but not dirty, solution to avoid excavating before the element, because otherwise we need to do the equivalent of right now of spec element, open my URL list, find the correct li item, and then open the span tag, and then ask the span, hey, what is your value? New task A. So instead of doing that, we just push an element, a title. There you go. So we can do it. The problem is that and then we can save the data. Let's go to the save data, local storage. But now we find the second problem, because here the machine expects, look, a string, and we don't have a string. We have an array of strings. So we need to convert this information. This is the problem number 2 that we have here in my problem. So we have this one done. This one is working already, but we need to, the solution is to convert the titles array into a long string, or a string, or a single string. So we need to do the step number 2. So let's do that in the local storage. In the local storage, we just need to say, I think that you saw this in Java. We have, when we want to convert an array to a string, we call this serialize. So we can create a variable called const serialize data equal. We need to pass the information. We need to pass some information. So we want to modify our function. When we save data, we need to pass our titles array here as well, because we need to tell them what to save. So we say the titles, and we say, serialize data equals titles dot join. And we can call this one data here because it's generic. So we don't care that it's our titles, dates, or whatever. We say data equal data dot join. So data is an array. Data is an array, and join is a property. Join is a property to convert or array into a long string. So let me open the documentation. W3 Schools JS join command. JavaScript array join. So let's see what is happening. We have an array. It's called bananas, orange, and apples. It's similar to our task list. So instead of having fruits, we have task. If I press try, it will create a long string. Now it's a single string with separation of commas. So we are going to use this one to do serialize data. Perfect. And now that we create this one, we can load the data. So let's say, what was the name? Is local storage. Was get item, right? Get item, and the list is to do. And this is why I wanted that you can refactor in the afternoon. Remember that when you have duplication of names, there is we have a problem, because imagine that you say to do here and then you make a typo and you say to do here, and the project will never work. So it's better to receive a string here, a variable here and here, and the variable has the name in the script tag here. So for example, local storage key. Oh, let me refactor right away, to be honest. Cons local storage storage key equal to do, and now I can just call the variable to do. There you go. And I will say console log data comma store. I will put this one in a variable cons data cons loaded data cons data equal local storage. And now we can also do a console log of the information that we have stored. We don't need to put a constant here because this is just an action saved to the variable. So let's see what is going on for now. And you can even refactor this even further, but I will leave that as an assignment if you want to do it. So let me open this one, reload the page, add a task. Oh, and you can see you can see that now we can even see the information that we have beforehand. Remember that I showed you the project at the beginning of the class? Because it's the same key, we can see the same information. So, but because we want to have a different example, let's call this to do SDA9. So this will be a new key, and now I say null because the information that we were seeing a couple of seconds ago was the information that we leave in the morning at the beginning of the exercise with the finished example. So we don't want that. We want to create from scratch the information. So we know that we start with null, but as soon as we save information, let's see. Let's say sons. Welcome to the jungle. One son, perfect. Welcome to the jungle. Let's say another son. Let's go with the Guns N' Roses. That's the soundtrack from the Terminator 2 and so on and so forth. And now we have this information. And let's see if it's working. We reload the page, cross our fingers. And you can see load data is a single string with my to-do list. First problem that you were going to realize that what happens if somebody actually writes a comma in my task. Yes, it will break. You can check for that one and convert it to a special character, so you don't have that conflict. But for now, we don't care about that. But now we have a second problem. We just like we serialize the data and we combined it. Remember, if you join something, you remember always the opposite. If you join something, you need to break it apart. So after a short break, 12 minutes, it will be okay. We're going to continue with the last part of the exercise where we actually going to break the data. And we finally going to explain what happened with the two lines of code I explained beforehand. So it's okay if we have 12 minutes break. I don't hear anybody.
Yes,
yes, it's okay.
Perfect. And I will create a branch before you leave. I will create a new branch called saving data for saving data, because this is what we have done so far. We can save data, and we're going to create and let me push it to the repository so you can see a evolution of time. And as soon as we return, just let it upload it. We're going to create a new branch and we're going to call it load data. And that will be the last part of the exercise. So we see you in 11 minutes. So we are back. Let me share the screen. We are for the final part of this small lecture. No, small, definitely not. Lecture. So the last thing that we did before the break was we managed to solve information from an array, and we know that we can load it, but right now it's a single string. So just like we join data, we need to break it apart. So this is what we're going to do right now. We're going to break this information into small blocks so we can return it. And in fact, not only console log it, but return it correctly, just like Ava said. So let's say first, let's use a return. Return data. And here, let's do in the script. Just give me 1 second. In the script, I am trying to do a small refactor right now. And instead of saying, we can say const data equal load data, and then console log data. So the console log is, I was gonna do the console log in the beginning, in the start function, in the local storage, let me put it on the right, we are gonna return it as the return type of this function. So let me reload the page just to see that this refactor is working. It's exactly the same, perfect. And inside here in this function, we're gonna break the data apart. Something important, we are serializing and deserializing inside these functions, only due to time. With more time, we will actually create a fifth JavaScript file called serializer GS that is instead of that takes care of serializing and deserializing information, takes care of joining and breaking the arrays. I will not connect it because I'm not gonna use it in this project. But what I'm trying to say is that if we were a little bit more organized, we can create a fifth function, and this one will take care of breaking the array or joining the array. And then local storage will never know that there was an array in the first place. It will just receive the data and be done with that. But due to time, we are not going to do it today. So, but that can be a task if you want to do it during the weekend or in the afternoon. Let me just delete this stuff. Okay, so now let's break the data apart. So let's rename this one raw data or join data, serialized data, just like this one, because we know there is a long string, so we need to break it down. So we know that this information is a single long string instead of an array. So first detail is we can return, first of all, remember that the first time that when we don't have any data, it returns null, and the null can make problems for us. So the first thing that we're gonna do is if serialized data equals null, then we return an empty array. What is this line for? Again, remember that when we open the project for the first time, when we haven't saved anything, our data doesn't exist, it's null. But because we are working with arrays, we are working in arrays, both for the titles and for the list items. When we want to display the information, we're going to create a for loop. And if we pass a null object in the for loop, our application will crash. So if we don't have information stored, we're going to return an empty array. So when you do a for loop of an empty array as an array that has 0 items, the for loop just runs 0 times, but it runs. Thus, the application will not break. But if you pass a null to a for loop, the application will crash. So if that happens, we're going to say null. So in that case, we return null. And let's do that. Now let's break the data apart. So let's say result will be we can say just return. Return will be literally serialized data dot split, and I can open the parentheses, and I can pass a string here, which is the string that we're gonna use to break my string apart. I will use a comma because this is what the machine does here. It joins my array and adds commas in between to know where the data is must be split. So we're gonna do this the inverse approach, and we're gonna say split here. We're gonna return the serialized data divided by commas. Again, in your serialize function, and this is another advantage of creating a function, a separate function for your serializer, is that in your serializer, you can take into consideration what happens if the user in the task add a comma. You can because in the titles array we don't have a problem. The problem that we have with that one is at the moment we save the information. So the advantage of having a serializer functions apart is that it will allow us to handle these edge cases. But for now, for this quick demo, we don't care about that. We cannot put commas inside our task list. That will be an assignment that you want to do if you want to practice a little bit of coding. But for now, this project safe is loading, and this data is working correctly. Now we can go to the scripts, and we can load data and console log this data to see what is happening. And if everything goes well, let me reload the page. Now load data becomes an array of titles, just like we needed. Perfect. So far, so good. We just need to do two things to finish this exercise. Number one, we need to display the list. And number two, when we remove the task, we're going to have a synchronization issue between our arrays of list items and an array of titles. And that was the lines of code that I was writing before to fix. So let's explain that from the beginning. But first of all, let's do our display information. We want to display the information on the screen at the beginning of our function. So let's do that. Shall we? We can create a function just for displaying items. We can put the code inside the start, but that will be a little bit too messy. So let's create a function just for display task or items, display list items. We're gonna create a function to display list items, and this one will be if we have data. If we have data, we don't need to say the if data because we take a care. We don't need to do an if because we take a care of that in the local storage by returning an empty array in case there was null. So we don't need to check for null here because we know that it's not gonna be null. We'll always return even an empty array. So we can call this function display list items. Perfect. And inside display list items, we just create. We need to assign the title. So they comes data, load data, and then titles dot push data. Data. What is this dot notation? I think that Kavana explained it, and if Kavana didn't explain it, this dot notation is we have one array here, and we know that data is an array. You can see that even says array string. We know that it's an array of string, and this push is for each item inside the data array. We're gonna run the titles dot push for each item of the data. So we're gonna literally we're pasting. We have an array. Sorry, let me see visually explain it. This is our array of data items. This is some data. And this is our local storage data, and this is my title data. My titles. So push literally says for each item in this array, literally make a copy. So do it like this. Boop. 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 In the same order. So this is what we are making with this line of code with the triple dot. So we fill our titles with this information, And based on these titles, we can go and say, we can use functional programming and use the map function, but for now I will use the for loop and then I will convert it to a map. But for let I equal 0, titles.len e++. And here we're gonna say, we're gonna create a new item. Remember, we need to create the list items, just like the button. Just like the button can create a task, we need to create task from scratch here. So we're gonna say const list item equal create item. What are the titles? The titles are these ones. So titles I for the index. And then we remember that we need to pass the remove data as well. So we need to say remove on remove task. Because otherwise our checkbox will not trigger any functions. And finally, or at least, yes, go ahead.
In the condition of the for loop, do you mean after let I equal to 0, isn't it I less than the title.length?
Oh, yes, you're right. Thank you so much. Nice eyes. Nice pairs of eyes. You are 100%. E is less than total length. Yes, indeed. And I think it's less than equal, right? No, less than title length, because this one actually counts one more numbers. If you have 2 items in the array, title's length will say 2. So yes, it's less than title's length. Perfect. Thank you so much for that one. And then we can say order list push. No, append child, sorry, append child, remember. And this is what you need to practice. Push is for a data arrays. Append child is for something that will appear on the screen. It's similar, but it's not the same. Append child, list item. So let's test it out. Perfect. Now on page load, we have our task list. We can add task without any issues. So for example, you can be, this can be Paradise City. Perfect. I can reload the page and I can say, for example, November rain. There we go. We are about to finish, but we have a problem. We know that we can add a task, but remember that we created 2 arrays. We have one array we have this array. Sorry, let me put it here. We have this array. This is the OL, and let me just write no, this is not one. Don't worry, we're about to finish. We have the OL list array. Let me put the title super big. I'm in bold. We have this array, but we also have another array. Let me just copy these ones. Let me group them together. We have another array. We now have the array for titles. And let me just put this one. Titles array. And this one is JavaScript strings. Yes, let me put the information here bigger. We have 2 arrays. We have one for the HTML elements, and then we'll put it in parentheses. HTML elements tags. And this one titles array is just JavaScript strings. So we can see there are totally different elements. This is literally HTML is tags, and this is JavaScript uppercase JavaScript strings. So, and this one contains, for example, let's say welcome to the jungle. I know that I made a typo, but I don't care right now. Welcome to the jungle. This is the first item. This is the second one. And this is the third one, for example, Paradise City. And this is November, blah, 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 blah. So we have a mismatch because if we go back to our code, this code is totally finished. Perfect. This one is also finished. Now we need to focus on this one. We have this console log for the remove event. We are removing, let me just put the screen side by side. We are removing the elements correctly from this one, but we are not removing from this one. So we have a mismatch. So we need to keep this array in sync, just like we are doing here. We are pushing the titles array, and we are pushing not pushing, appending the items here, the HTML tags. So we need to do the same thing here. Unfortunately, this is where the lines of code that we were seeing before will appear. Between we remove child. I don't need to tell the index of the child. I just pass the element, and JavaScript in the DOM will take care of finding where is the element that we need to remove. That's not a problem. But unfortunately, we don't know what is the, remember, now I can do this illustration. We have this information. We know that the first item says welcome to the Jungle, the second one says Paradise City, and the second says November rain. November rain. So we know that these titles are here, but we are triggering the event. Let me see this line of code. We are triggering the event from the checkbox, and from the checkbox, for the checkbox we are going to the list item, but we don't have information here. So we need to say what is the index of this element, so we can work on this array of data. So we know we need to get if we click on this item, we need to get this index 1. So we can say remove this the element from the intent position 0. So that's why we create this line of code. So we create nodes equal array from, and we say list dot children. And that's why it's so important that we say children. Now you understand. If we don't say children, let me just send this one to the back. If we don't say children, this element will be the or list, and now or list array or tax array will have one element more than this one. We will be out of sync, and it will be a disaster. So no, we need to say only the children, not the OL tag. So okay, perfect. Now that we have the node arrays, I don't need to do the console log because we already did it. We know that this converts into array, and based on that information, we can get the index. So const index equal node index of. So literally is okay. I know that we have this item. What is your index? Or is my index 1? What is my index of this one? Is index 2. So this is literally index of, and it was this one. I can do a console log. No, I will go directly. And now we can say titles. How do we remove this element in JavaScript? It's quite simple. There is a function called splice that allows me to remove an element based on a position of an index. So let's do titles.splice, open parentheses, and it says start position and how many items I want to delete. My start position is the index I just created, index. And how many items I want to delete? It's just one. I just want to delete one element, nothing more, nothing less. And then we save data based on the titles. Now the titles have one less item. So when we save the information, we save the updated information. So let's go back. Let's delete Paradise City and cross the fingers that it works. No crashes. Okay. And now the final test. If everything goes okay, the information was saved and Paradise City doesn't exist anymore on our computer. So we're gonna, to make more drama, we're gonna close the browser and cross our fingers, paste the link, and yes, it's working. Now just to finish the exercise, let's make it a little bit pretty, and let me uncomment let it download from the internet. It looks like the Sakura website is getting a lot of traffic. You are not that many students. I don't know why it's so slow, but there you go. Now we finished the exercise. So we just did in around 2 or 3 hours, something that in Java, I know that, by the way, I know that the code that you make in Java was better, but as you can see, we can store information just like Java does, and we did it in 3 hours instead of 4 weeks. So Yeah, start to appreciate JavaScript. It's maybe not as professional as Java, but it can get you the job done quite well. So, okay, with that out of the way, questions?
I just had one from earlier when you were finding the list items. Why did you do it that way, and not do it with the class appends method? If you know what I'm talking about.
Go again. Say the name of the class.
So basically, once you find the element, it's your same function. Except all you do is you append when they tick the box, you append a class saying ticked, and then when you go to remove, you would use a query selector to find the classes that have ticked on, and it would then remove those list items.
Oh yeah, you can, yes.
Instead of doing the arrays and finding the numbers and all of that, because I've seen a lot. Just from the tutorials I've watched, the people usually use the appending classes method for doing those sorts of DOM manipulations.
Yeah, I think I hear two things that you said. Number one, you say append a class, the CSS, okay, number one. Number two, you can check the status of which checkbox is ticked, that's right. Because remember that we are only ticking one, we are ticking one checkbox at a time, and as soon as it's ticked, the code to remove it, it works. So you say two approaches. Let's go with the second one. It's a nice approach, and if you can refactor it, perfect. That will be wonderful. The first one, I will tell you, is an incorrect approach. Why the adding? But I will explain why. And the second one, let me tell you, the second one is even better than the approach I'm doing. So I have no problems recognizing that somebody gave a better answer. But I can tell you that the first one is even worse than the one I'm saying. Why? Let me go to share the screen. But don't worry, the second approach that you said is even better than the one I did. I can refactor the code for the next SDA and use that approach. But let me see why the first one is bad. Let's see, 1 second. Open this one. You're seeing my screen, right? Remember that I always tell you about separation of concerns. HTML for data, CSS, and including the CSS classes for design purposes only, and JavaScript for logic. If we use we append a class to check which one is ticked, we are starting to use graphic design tools to code. So we are going against our separation of concerns. So that I will not recommend to use the append class for doing this purpose. It works, yes, makes sense. You add a class to this element, and once it's ticked, you add the class or you remove it, and then you can check which element, which HTML element has the class, and search for that and remove the element. But you are using a CSS that is only designed for graphic design for these purposes. So that the first approach, even if it works, I feel that is a hack. The second one that you said is an amazing one. It's a better suggestion. And to be honest, it's even better than the code that I did. I give you the credit. The second one is, yes, we can check in HTML using JavaScript. We can check the status of the checkbox. So we can check with what checkbox is ticked and which one is doesn't. And because we are only checking one task at a time, as soon as the checkbox is ticked, we can check for that behavior or event, and then just find the item quite easily. So yes, that's a better approach. So yes, that's a better approach. I will say yes, it's a better approach, and you can refactor it. And I'm probably gonna, if I remember by the next iteration, I probably refactor the code and do that as well. So yes, congratulations. The second approach is better. But I want to warn everybody that the first one is even you are mixing up the separation of concerns. We need to keep this thing quite separated, because once we reach React, we can see still the screen. The difficulty of this element will be see like this. So we really need to be super organized, that this is one thing, this is another thing, and this one is another thing, because if we make a soup, it will be super painful for debug. But yes, you're right. Checking for the status of the checkbox is a really clean approach. Yeah, you can do that. Any other question? Sangeeta, go ahead. Yes.
Can we use a filter method to remove the elements from the array?
A filter, yeah, the problem with the filter, yes, technically it can be done, but the problem with the filter is that as soon as you, let's say that for some reason the user, remember, test edge cases. What happens if I add Paradise City as the first song, then Welcome to the Jungle, don't care about the music at all, just focus on the words. And my third task is again Paradise City. When you do the filter, you will remove the third item as you were expecting, but you also will remove the third because they are a perfect match. In case that the user write the same name with the same spaces, with the same uppercase and lowercase and so on, that can happen, it will fail, the filter. That's why I will not recommend that one because it can fail.
Okay, only the spice method will work exactly what we expect, right?
Yeah, let me showcase the documentation. Remember, each time that you want to see in documentation, you have two wonderful resources for JavaScript. If you just want to do read something simple, something for basic, go to DoubleTree Schools. Schools. I'm sharing the screen, right?
No.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Okay, two resources. When you want to go to something simple, just something like, oh, I don't remember the function, what are the parameters, go to DoubleTree Schools and then write the function. And then this will give you the information. So you can see that, for example, this fruit array, if I click, it will add or remove elements. So you can read the documentation here that they do add or remove items from an array and returns the elements from the return array. So it creates a new copy. Quite easy. Another resource.
Thank you.
Yeah, but don't worry. But let me give you one more. If you want to read more in depth or you want to do more complex stuff, for example, when we want to deal with Canvas, that is much more advanced than these exercises, you go to Mozilla documentation and you go to Splice. As you can see that just by the very start, let me just go back to in Google so we can compare. Just by the titles, you can see how different these two resources are. I say DoubleTree School. Let me just put it here. So Mozilla School is a JavaScript array splice. And let's see how Mozilla write the documentation. It says array.prototype.splice. So these guys take this stuff super seriously, and they write super, just like this is closer to the official. If we ever gonna get an official JavaScript documentation, it's from these guys. So these guys write the stuff. Remember when you were seeing in Java your collections, and Kavan and Johan show you the official hierarchy chart of the collection because it has like a shit ton of stuff from Java, from the creator, from Oracle. Well, when you want to learn something in depth, go with the Mozilla guys. When you want to do something quick and dirty, go with the DoubleTree Schools. I always have been using the DoubleTree Schools in these examples when I forgot about something, because it's not that I don't know how to use I know how to use the method. It's just I don't need to memorize all the arguments. I don't remember the arguments. So I just want to a quick refresher of what to do. Oh, I need to do the index. Oh, there you go. That's why I use this one normally. But when I want to learn something in JavaScript from the very beginning, so let's say that I don't know about Canvas and I want to learn about Canvas, I use the resource on the right. So remember, once you learn something, go with this one because it's quicker. It's just give me the information that I want. Like it's a Google search. When you want to learn in depth, go to the right. So I hope that answered the question. Next one. We don't have more questions. If not, I think that we have two choices. We can take a break for 15 and then go to the fetch function. But I think that the popular opinion will be, we have 1 day for backup tomorrow. We're gonna take 15 minutes for the fetch tomorrow. And then the rest of the 45 minutes are literally just for, well, because we don't have nothing, we can make questions about about your case study, and we can do a quick tour of what is coming next week. Consider this the tomorrow's 1 hour lecture as a kickoff of the next week that is all about React. And then I will show you a small tour of the articles I have written, so you have a preparation material for the for the next week. So option number 1, we can take a small break and then we can do fetch right now. Option number 2, we do it tomorrow because we have plenty of time. So which one do you prefer? I don't hear voices.
Tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow. I think it's better for everybody. Yeah, I see a question. Somebody raised a hand. Sorry, it was at the very same time, so we clash. So option number 2. Okay, yeah, that's a popular opinion. Okay, go ahead, Tamana.
Yeah. Can you explain the order of connecting JS files in HTML?
Yeah, let me share the screen. Don't worry. Here, okay. We are because I never teach about classes in JavaScript nor in modules. We are just creating JavaScript files. Let me finish this one. Finish exercise. Let me create a new branch, number 6. Display items. List items. So this is the last branch. This we are in finish exercise. Yeah, due to time, this code is a little bit dirty, but the one that is in the SDA platform is the one that with more time to develop, so it's way better. But it still can be refactored. Let me remove these commas. Remove mix buggy commas. There you go, and push again. Now let's do super quickly. By the way, we finished. So if somebody wants to just go out, it's okay. But in any case, first of all, I always like to group my files, JavaScript files inside a JavaScript folder. Step number 1. Number 2, we know that our file that acts as an entry point. Let me go back to my diagram in Whimsical. My main Java. I remember that in IntelliJ, I had to append a small icon, a play icon. Let me see, play icon. Play. I remember that IntelliJ appended a green play icon to your main Java. Do you remember that? So consider a script as our entry point or play icon. So this is our entry point. We imported last. Why I imported last? Because unfortunately, because we are not working with modules, and we're gonna work with modules next week. Don't worry. Next week is literally the stuff how you should code. We need to load the items in order because behind the scenes, the browser is copy pasting this code inside this file and then inside this file until this file, and we need to load the information before we. Otherwise, when we click the button and create an item, and if the information still doesn't exist, it will throw an error. And how do we create add files? Simple. Script tag source dot slash to open my. Look at this. Is quite similar to my file or project explorer. I press dot slash and it shows me a small window that is quite similar to this one. It doesn't show me the git ignore because it's a hidden file. And then I can press gs. It's the equivalent of opening this window. Slash. And then you can see the same files that are here. And then I load my tag. Perfect. And then I need to close my tag. And this one, unfortunately, is not a self-closing tag. It's a normal tag because you can write code inside here. But if we're going to have the code, the JavaScript file code here, then it makes no sense to have code here and in the files. So that's why we leave it empty on purpose. That was the question?
Eduardo, can we use import in JavaScript as well? Like yesterday we did in CSS by importing all the CSS file in one style.css, and we have in main file we have used that style.css. Similarly, can we use only one script tag in the main file and import all others in one file?
Wonderful question. The answer is yes. The problem with that one is that I need to teach you about modules, and I will. There is a required material that you need to learn about that, and you will learn that in React. I created the articles for React that they have before we enter the exercise. We have a prerequisite reading, and in this prerequisite reading, we explain about modules because unfortunately it's not as easy as the imports in CSS. Remember something, the import that we did in CSS, as I mentioned with Nuri, behind the scenes, they were not scope variables. Everything was global still. The only thing that was making the machine is making is copying this file and pasting in this file, and then copy this file and then paste it in this file, and then copy this file and paste it in this file. This is what the machine is doing in the CSS import behind the scenes. And this is exactly the thing that we're doing here. So modules in JavaScript, let me reverse. This is why you use GitHub. So you can fix this thing. Modules are real object-oriented programming, or in this case, more for functional programming, scopes, encapsulation. So that one will start, it's more complex and it needs to be explained into details. Remember, again, we are teaching JavaScript. We can do wrap up our lecture in JavaScript in today with the fetch data, and we finish in 2 days. But if we want to teach stuff, we need more days. So between the golden triangle for the resources, time, project management, and modules, unfortunately, the triangle is more important than the JavaScript modules. So somebody needs to cut content, and the front-end module gets there is not enough days for that. For teaching modules, we probably need a couple of hours. And I hope that the articles I wrote with the requisite material of the modules will explain it a little bit better. And then next week, we can focus on modules in React. Don't worry, we're gonna do it anyways. And then that will allow you to actually organize your project as it always should be. If we have more week on programming on front-end development, then yes, I will take charge of the entire JavaScript introduction, including modules. But due to time, due to the constraints of the program, only 2 weeks for front-end development, something needs to be cut down. And unfortunately, modules were the ones that got the axe. So, but yes, it can be done, but it's not as simple as the CSS. The CSS was a hack as the one that I showed you. Behind the scenes, the browser is just doing that, the copy paste behind the scenes. And so it's only, even if you see one file in the CSS, it's the same thing as importing it's importing all the links here, like here, tag. So it looks cleaner, but behind the scenes, it's the same thing behind the scenes. So that's why. But we're gonna learn modules next week. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Don't worry. Any other question? I see something in the chat. Just give me 1 second. Let me open the window. There you go. Transfer session. Okay. Yeah, I think that we can wrap it up. So thank you so much. I will unlock the exercise right away. And see you tomorrow. Oh, see, and we have an optional lecture about TypeScript at 5 o'clock in case that you want to assist. It's not obligatory, but highly recommended. Bye.